But there are roughly three masculine archetypes. There's the refined, there's the rakish, and then there's the rugged. Okay? And I don't want to belabor that too much, but most men, the majority of men fall into one of these archetypes. I fall into the refined archetype. And let me read some of this stuff off too, since we want to get into it. Refined, masculine, masculine archetype. Understand where you Understanding where you fall is important as well. Refine. Mm, 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 mm. Here we go. All right, so just a general overview. A refined man is a man who is financially and influentially masculine. He bends the world to his will by the means of his connections, his money, his social and political power. He's capable of mixing both direct and subtle elements to accomplish his ends. That's what the category that most fits with me. All right. And no one is greater or better than the other. They all have their uses. The next one is going to be called rugged. Rugged is a man who is physically masculine. He bends nature to his will by means of brute force and like a caveman attitude that kind of borderline with that no nonsense kind of thing. There's nothing subtle about a rugged man, and everything in life exists for a specific direct purpose. He's an adventurer, a mountain man, a gladiator, a blue collar worker. The majority of men fall into this category. And it's going to be important that you understand your masculine archetype, because your image, how you carry yourself into the world, needs to line up with who you are. And then the rake. The rake is a man who is socially masculine. He influences individual people by his will, his attitude, his charisma, and his disdain for the rules of society, and being beholden to another man. He is capable of using direct elements to accomplish his goals, but he lives largely in a subtle world, always thinking 2 to 3 steps ahead of people around him. And this is like, if you think of Johnny Depp's characters that he tends to play in Hollywood, he tends to play a rakish kind of character. I know I don't want to use these archetypes because especially in these spaces, they get kind of overused in my opinion, but this is quintessential Sigma male kind of stuff. All of these men have something to do. Refine, rake, rogue. Refine, rake, rugged. Which one are you? No, and that's one of the things if I were a young man, I would start, because you're at the bottom of your earning potential, at the bottom of your purpose. So your image is going to be critical. It is how people are going to identify you now and in the future. So one of the most effective things a young man can do is honestly figuring out his archetype, understanding his style, personality, and living and working in those and living, dressing, moving, and working in those environments. Because you have to ask yourself, how does a refined man live? How does he speak? What does he live? What does he eat? What does he drive? Who does he date? All these things. And it's not necessarily a matter of your profession. It's a matter of an archetype. There's a masculine archetype and a style personality. So like with me, I'm a refined masculine archetype with a European style personality. Think James Bond. Think James Bond. Think James Bond, or think the guys from Suits. Well, actually, the guys from Suits lean a little bit more corporate. Harvey Specter on Suits, he leans a little bit more corporate powerhouse. Think of your typical CEO or your typical politician, and that tends to be much more of a ghost on power. Idris Elba. A lot of the characters he plays, that tends to be an all-Americans kind of style personality. Now, European, American, and corporate powerhouse may look alike, may look very similar, but they're different in so many different ways. But me, refined European, European, and in particular, what style of European? There's French, Italian, and English. I actually will be refined European English because I tend to like a well constructed suit with proper lines and everything like that. Why is this important? Because as a young man, many young men today mess up with their image because you're still dressing like you dressed when you were in junior high and high school. And you don't have to do that. There's ways to dress yourself well on a budget. But one of the biggest mistakes a lot of young men make is dressing too young to be taken seriously and then hanging on too long and not moving it to the next